guys, good day. I'm Ali Arginda from BSA 3I, and I started making my activity, which is the skeleton system of the Muscovy duck, from July 3 to July 7, and umabot siya ng 4 days kasi may iilang problems ako na na-encounter during the process. Ito yung pag-alis ng laman and balat sa part ng wings, neck, and pati yung sa paa. And for the materials na ginamit ko, ito sila guys. The skeletal system of Muscovy duck. The skeletal system provides the strong framework for the support and protection of the remainder of the systems, organs, and tissues that make up the body of the fowl or poultry species. Now, let's move on to the parts and function of the skeletal system of Muscovy duck. The first part of the skeletal system of the Muscovy duck, we have the incisive. Incisive is an opening each lateral part of the occipital bone, or the upper beak. They use their beaks and hard tongue to manipulate their food in their mouth. Next to incisive, we have the mandible. Mandible is the only movable bone of the skull and is attached to muscles involved in chewing and other mouth movements. Next to the mandible, we have the skull, wherein it protects the brain of the poultry species. Next to the skull, we have the quadrate. Quadrate is a part of the beak suspension and plays an important role in craniokinesis. Next to the quadrate, we have the atlas. Atlas is a small and ring-like with a deep cavity for articulation with a single projection or condyle at the base of the skull. Next to the atlas, we have the neck or cervical vertebrae. Cervical vertebrae are quite long in most poultry species to enable protection for delicate tissues of the brain from too much jarring when landing. The flexibility of the neck acts as a shock absorber. Next to the cervical vertebrae, we have the clavicle or collarbone. Clavicle is a thin, rod-like, and slightly bent. Its upper or dorsal end relates to the coracoid bone. The other end is joined to that of the other wing to form the wishbone. The combined clavicles form a bone called the furcula that can act like a spring and provides a firm base of support for the wing. After the clavicle, we have the coracoid. Coracoid is the strongest bone of the shoulder girdle. One end carries a flattened articular surface to fit into sternum. At the end is a hole or foramen for the connection of clavicular air sac. Next to the coracoid, we have the sternum or breastbone. Sternum is a complex shape and has been described as a quadrilateral curved plate with processes projecting from each angle and from the middle of the cranial caudal border. Next to the sternum, we have the humerus or the upper arm. The humerus is a large, long bone with an ovoid head for articulation with the scapula, coracoid, and clavicle. It is a pneumatic bone with a connection with the clavicular air sac. Next to the humerus, we have the scapula. Scapula is a narrow, thin, and slightly curved, which is unlike the shoulder blade of other animals. At the cranial end, a section of a cavity receives the head of the humerus. Next to the scapula, we have the radius and ulna. Radius and ulna are the forearm of the wings that support the midwing. Next to the radius and ulna, we have the metacarpus. Metacarpus is in the form of a single bone that is produced by the union of three elements that corresponds to the first, second, and third metacarpal bones of the theropod limb. Next to the metacarpus, we have the ribs. There are 7 pairs of ribs originating on the thoracic vertebrae and all but first, second, and do not reach the sternum, which is their other attachment point. Next to the ribs, we have the ilium. Ilium is fused to the last thoracic, lumbar, and sacral vertebrae to provide strength and rigidity. Next to ilium, we have the ischium. Ischium is much smaller,
and is continuous with ilium. An opening provides access for the sciatic nerve. Next to the ischium, we have the pubis. Pubis is a narrow strip of bone that runs along the border of the ischium, to which is joined for a short distance only. Next to the pubis, we have the pygostyle. Pygostyle is an important structure that serves to mount the tail feathers, providing critical control surfaces, especially during takeoff and landing. Next to the pygostyle, we have the femur. Femur is a typically long bone and it's quite thick and bent. The proximal end has a prominent head that fits loosely into the acetabulum. The distal end carries the deep pulley-shaped surface for the patella and two convex condyles that articulate with the bones end of the lower leg. Next to the femur, we have the fibula. Fibula is greatly reduced compared to the other animals and consists of a slender spicule and has a flattened head for attachment to the proximal head of the tibia. Next to the fibula, we have the tibia. Tibia is much longer bone than the fibula and it's much thicker at the proximal end that it is at the distal end. The proximal row of the tarsal bones is fused to the distal end of the tibia. Next to the tibia, we have the metatarsus. Metatarsus is a long bone actually formed by the union of the second, third, and fourth metatarsal bones.